Imagine standing at the base of something so massive, so impossibly precise, that even with every crane, every laser-guided machine, every supercomputer we have today, engineers still cannot agree on exactly how it was done 4,500 years ago, with copper tools and human hands. That is not a mystery from a movie. That is the Great Pyramid of Giza. And it is still standing right now in the Egyptian desert, daring us to explain it. For most of your life, you were probably told the same story. Slaves dragged enormous stones across the sand. Pharaohs cracked whips, a brutal, simple answer to a question that doesn't deserve a simple answer. But here's the thing. That story has been falling apart for decades. And recently, something shifted. Artificial intelligence, specifically the AI called Grok, built by xAI, became one of the most talked about tools being used to re-examine pyramid data. Not to invent conspiracy theories, not to push aliens, but to actually analyze the numbers, the architecture, the physics, and the historical records, and ask a very direct question. Does the mainstream story actually hold up? The answer is more fascinating than any conspiracy theory you've ever heard. Because the truth, the real documented evidence-backed truth, is already extraordinary enough to blow your mind. And by the end of this, you're going to look at the pyramids in a way you never have before. Let's start with something that most people never think about. The sheer, almost offensive level of precision in the Great Pyramid's construction. We're not talking about being a few inches off. We are talking about a structure that covers 13 acres of land, uses 2.3 million stone blocks averaging 2.5 tons each, some weighing up to 80 tons, and the base of that structure is level to within just 2.1 centimeters across its entire 230-meter length. In the modern era, with GPS satellites and laser instruments, we would be proud of that accuracy. In 2500 BC, it is almost incomprehensible. The four sides of the base are aligned to true north, south, east, and west, with an error of less than 1/15 of a single degree. The Egyptians didn't have a compass, they used the stars, and they got it more accurate than many modern constructions do with full technological assistance. Now ask yourself, why does that level of precision matter? A tomb doesn't need to be aligned to the cardinal directions within a fraction of a degree. A tomb doesn't need to have internal passages that align with specific star positions. And a tomb definitely doesn't need to encode the mathematical ratio of pi, 3.14159, in the relationship between its height and its base perimeter. Thousands of years before the Greek mathematician Archimedes is credited with calculating it. These details were not accidents. They were deliberate. They were engineered. And the people who built them understood geometry, astronomy, and mathematics at a level that challenges everything we assume about what ancient humans were capable of. Here's where AI analysis enters the conversation. And this is genuinely important to understand. When researchers and curious users began feeding historical data, architectural measurements, structural scans, and archaeological reports into AI systems like Grok, what they found was that the traditional explanation, the one with simple ramps and unlimited slave labor, starts to crack under mathematical scrutiny, not because of anything supernatural, but because the logistics simply don't add up the way we were taught. Consider this. The Great Pyramid was built for Pharaoh Khufu, and most Egyptologists believe it took approximately 20 years to complete. That means to place 2.3 million blocks that average 2.5 tons each. Workers would have needed to set one block every single minute of every single hour of every single day for 20 straight years, day and night. No breaks, one block per minute. And many of those blocks came from quarries hundreds of miles away. The granite used in the king's chamber came from Aswan, roughly 800 kilometers to the south. That granite was transported without wheeled vehicles, because wheels weren't in common use in Egypt at that time, and lifted to a height of 43 meters inside the structure with a precision that means not even a piece of paper can slide between the joints of those stones today. That last detail, hold on to that. The joints in the king's chamber stonework are so tight, some measured at just 0.5 millimeters, that modern stonemasons say it would be extraordinarily difficult to replicate that accuracy, even with today's diamond cutting tools, and the ancient Egyptians did it with copper chisels and dolerite hammering. Stones. Or at least that's the official explanation. What AI analysis has done is force a more honest conversation about whether that explanation is complete. Not whether it's wrong, but whether it's the whole picture. Because here is what archaeology has confirmed beyond any doubt. The pyramids were built by Egyptians. Let that be absolutely clear. There is no credible scientific evidence, none, that aliens built the pyramids. None that some lost advanced civilization did it. The evidence points to human beings, specifically to organized teams of skilled Egyptian workers, engineers, architects, and administrators who were some of the most sophisticated project managers in the ancient world. We know this because we found their village, we found their tools, we found their graffiti on the stones inside the pyramids, we found their bakeries, their breweries, their medical records, we found the bones of workers who had healed broken legs, evidence of medical care being provided on site. These were not slaves being whipped in the desert. These were state employees, fed, housed, and apparently given decent health care by the standards of their time. The 1990 discovery of the workers' cemetery at Giza by archaeologist Zahi Hawass was one of the most important moments in Egyptology, because it settled, once and for all, the question of whether it was slave labor. The tombs of the workers were built near the pyramids, an honor that would never have been granted to slaves. These people were proud of what they built. They were buried as craftsmen, as participants in something sacred. The graffiti teams left inside the pyramid structure itself, phrases like "Friends of Khufu" scrawled on interior stones, tells you something about their spirit. These workers had identity. They had pride. They were part of something they believed mattered. But knowing who built the pyramids is different from knowing how they were built. And that second question, the how, is still legitimately debated by serious archaeologists today. And this is where recent research, including AI-assisted analysis, has started producing genuinely fascinating and credible new theories. In September 2025, a peer-reviewed study published in the journal PLOS One turned heads across the scientific community. Researcher Xavier Landreau and his team from Paleotechnic, a research institute in Paris, proposed something that sounds radical until you look at the evidence. The ancient Egyptians may have used a hydraulic lift system, powered by redirected Nile floodwaters, to raise heavy stone blocks during the construction of the step pyramid at Saqqara. The key to this theory is a large rectangular stone enclosure near the pyramid called the Gisr el-Mudir. For decades, archaeologists dismissed it as ceremonial or unfinished. Landreau's team, using satellite imagery, digital elevation models, and field surveys, showed that it may actually be the oldest known check dam in Egypt, a structure designed to control and redirect water flow. If they're right, the ancient Egyptians weren't just master stoneworkers. They were hydraulic engineers thousands of years ahead of when we thought such technology existed. Now, not everyone is convinced. Other experts point out that previous archaeological investigations of the same site suggest the step pyramid was expanded in stages, not built with a single hydraulic system. And questions remain about whether such a system could realistically raise stones to the full height of the structure. But the fact that the theory is being peer-reviewed and published in serious scientific journals tells you something important. The conversation about pyramid construction has moved far beyond textbooks. New data is changing old assumptions. In early 2026, another study proposed what researchers called an integrated edge ramp system, a computational approach that modeled the most efficient ramp configuration for moving stone blocks up the pyramid's exterior. This wasn't guesswork. It was based on actual archaeological evidence from the Hatnub quarries in Egypt, where ancient ramp systems were carved directly into rock, with post holes designed to distribute enormous loads. The same technique, at a larger scale, could explain how massive blocks were moved to the upper levels of the pyramid. And separately, a researcher named Dr. Schuring proposed that the Egyptians used a sophisticated network of internal counterweights and pulley-like mechanisms inside the pyramid as it was being built, using the structure itself as a machine to lift the stones that completed it. Each of these theories is grounded in real evidence. None of them require anything supernatural. And together, they paint a picture of ancient Egyptian engineering that is, frankly, more impressive than any alien narrative has ever been. Because if aliens built the pyramids, the achievement belongs to aliens. But if human beings, organized Egyptian workers using physics, water, rope, wood, and copper, built those structures, then the achievement belongs to us, to humanity, to what our species is capable of when we organize, when we plan, when we commit to something generational. And here's the part that often gets lost in the debate. The pyramids weren't just engineering projects. They were the result of an entire civilization reorganizing itself around a single monumental goal. Egyptologist Mark Lehner, who has spent decades excavating the Giza Plateau, believes the pyramid construction process may itself have been a nation. Building tool. When the Nile flooded every year, the farmlands became temporarily unusable. Tens of thousands of farmers who would otherwise be idle were instead mobilized, fed, housed, and given a purpose by the state. The pyramids didn't just reflect the power of the pharaohs, they created it. They unified a fractured population around a shared identity, a shared project, a shared sacred purpose. The pyramid was not just a tomb, it was a statement. It was Egypt saying to the world and to eternity, well, how we exist, we matter, and we built this. That socioeconomic theory got a genuinely interesting treatment in a 2026 academic paper published through SSRN, in which researcher Jacek Christon subjected his process as the goal model to review by 5 different AI systems, including Grok, GPT-4o, Gemini, DeepSeek, and Perplexity. The theory argues that monumental construction projects like the pyramids were pretexts for launching long-term processes of social integration and centralized resourcing, redistribution. In other words, the building was the point, not just the building. The act of organizing hundreds of thousands of people, feeding them, coordinating them, solving the engineering problems in real time, that process is what built Egypt as a functional state. And the AI systems reviewing the theory found it logically consistent and archaeologically supportable. This is legitimate interdisciplinary research. This is what AI contributing to historical understanding actually looks like. Now let's talk about the viral wave that swept across YouTube and social media starting in early 2026. Because it's important to be honest about what that actually was. Dozens of videos with titles like Grok AI finally reveals who built the pyramids, with undeniable proof, racked up millions of views. And most of those videos were AI-narrated content farm productions using dramatic music and AI voiceovers to suggest that Grok had made some shocking new official discovery that overturned everything historians believed. That framing was misleading. Grok is a chatbot. XAI did not publish a scientific paper revealing pyramid secrets. What actually happened is that users asked Grok questions about the pyramids, and Grok, like any AI language model, synthesized available information and highlighted interesting inconsistencies in the traditional narrative. That's genuinely useful, but it's not the same as a scientific revelation. The videos weaponized real curiosity about a real mystery and wrapped it in manufactured drama, and the danger of that is that it muddies the water for people who are genuinely trying to understand one of history's most extraordinary stories. The actual mystery of the pyramids doesn't need inflation. It doesn't need alien theories or viral exaggeration. It is already one of the most remarkable stories in human history, and the closer you look at the real evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. Think about the descending passage inside the Great Pyramid. It runs at an angle of exactly 26 degrees and 34 minutes. And when you look up through it at the precise time it was built, it aligned perfectly with the North Pole star of that era, Thuban. Think about the Great Gallery, a soaring core belt corridor rising 8.5 meters high inside the pyramid, with stones fitted so perfectly that the structure has maintained its integrity through thousands of years of earthquakes. Think about the air shafts, narrow channels running from the king's chamber through the body of the pyramid to the exterior, that aligned with specific stars in Orion's belt and the constellation Draco as they appeared in the sky in 2500 BC. Were these shafts functional ventilation? Religious symbolism pointing the pharaoh's soul toward the afterlife? Something else entirely? Archaeologists genuinely debate this, and the debate is fascinating. Think about the Sphinx. Sitting just east of the pyramid complex carved from a single outcropping of limestone, the Great Sphinx is the largest monolithic statue on Earth. Its face is believed to represent Pharaoh Khafra, but geologist Robert Schoch caused enormous controversy in the 1990s when he argued that the erosion patterns on the Sphinx's body were consistent with water erosion, specifically heavy rainfall, rather than wind and sand erosion. The problem? Egypt has been mostly desert for the last 5,000 years. To show that kind of rainfall erosion, the Sphinx would need to be significantly older than mainstream Egyptology accepts. Schoch's theory is not accepted by mainstream archaeology, and most Egyptologists strongly dispute it. But it's an example of how the pyramids and their surrounding complex keep generating legitimate scientific questions that don't have simple answers. What AI tools like Grok can actually offer, when used responsibly, is the ability to synthesize vast amounts of data, identify patterns, and highlight areas where current models may be incomplete, not to replace archaeologists, but to assist them. In the same way that satellite imagery revolutionized archaeological surveys in the late 20th century, allowing researchers to spot previously invisible structures beneath sand and soil, AI analysis can spot inconsistencies in datasets that human researchers might overlook. Used honestly, that's powerful. Used irresponsibly, it becomes the fuel for clickbait. And there is something deeply ironic about the viral pyramid content spreading across social media right now, because the real story, and the one that's actually true, is more compelling, more surprising, and more emotionally resonant than any alien theory. The idea that human beings, 4,500 years ago, without computers, without steel, without the wheel and widespread use, without GPS or satellites, organized themselves into one of the largest and most complex construction projects in history, built something so precise that modern engineers are still trying to understand the methods, and created a structure that has outlasted every empire, every religion, every language, and every civilization that has risen and fallen since. That story is not less impressive because it involves humans. It is infinitely more impressive because it involves humans. Every single stone in the Great Pyramid was touched by human hands. Every single measurement was made by a human mind. Every problem, And there were thousands of them, from water supply logistics to stone transport to structural load calculation, was solved by a human brain using tools we would consider primitive. And the result stands today, 4,500 years later, as the last surviving wonder of the ancient world. Let's also address something that often comes up in these discussions: the idea that ancient Egyptians couldn't possibly have been sophisticated enough to build the pyramids. That line of thinking has a troubling history. It was driven partly by the inability of 19th century European scholars to accept that an African civilization had achieved something so extraordinary without outside help. The alien theory in its origins wasn't just speculation, it was in some ways a failure of imagination, an unwillingness to credit the Egyptians with the brilliance that the evidence demands we give them. Modern archaeology has corrected this. The Egyptian civilization that built the pyramids was one of the most administratively complex, mathematically, sophisticated and culturally rich societies the ancient world ever produced. Their medical knowledge was advanced, their legal system was codified, their art was breathtaking, their understanding of astronomy, as reflected in the pyramid alignments, was extraordinary. The pyramids are not a mystery that requires an outside explanation. They are the predictable output of one of history's greatest civilizations, operating at the peak of its organizational and intellectual power. What's fascinating, and this is genuinely new territory that AI analysis has helped open up, is that the pyramids may have encoded information that we still haven't fully decoded. The mathematical relationships embedded in the structure, the relationship between height and base perimeter that encodes pi, the proportions that encode the golden ratio phi, the astronomical alignments, suggest that the architects were deliberately embedding knowledge into the architecture itself. Some researchers believe the pyramid was designed to function as a kind of permanent record, a statement carved in stone that would survive long after the civilization that built it had changed beyond recognition. Whether that's true or not, the fact that we're still debating what the pyramids meant, what their full purpose was, what knowledge they contained, is itself a testament to the ambition of the people who built them. And that brings us back to the question of AI. Because here's something genuinely worth thinking about. We are now at a point in human history where we have tools, satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, LiDAR scanning, neutron tomography, and artificial intelligence that the builders of the pyramids could not have dreamed of. And we are using those tools to try to understand what those builders did. There's something poetic about that. The most powerful technology our civilization has ever created is being aimed at the most ambitious construction project our civilization's ancestors ever completed. And what we keep finding every time we look closer is not that the pyramids are less than we thought. We keep finding that they are more. In 2017, the Scan Pyramids project used muon tomography, a particle physics imaging technique, to discover a large, previously unknown void inside the Great Pyramid above the Grand Gallery. It's at least 30 meters long. We don't know what it is. It could be a construction void left to relieve structural pressure. It could be a hidden chamber. We don't know. And that's the thing. After 4,500 years of looking at the most studied structure in human history, we are still making discoveries. There are still secrets inside those stones. And the scientists working to uncover them are not alien theorists or clickbait creators. They are physicists, engineers, archaeologists, and mathematicians who are genuinely excited about what they might find. This is the story that deserves your attention, not the viral videos claiming Grok finally revealed some shocking truth that overturns everything. The real revelation is that the truth has been there all along, in the stones, in the workers' graffiti, in the ancient papyrus records we found, in the bones of the builders buried with honor near the monuments they created. And it is already one of the most staggering achievements in the history of our species. The next time you see a headline claiming AI has finally revealed something shocking about the pyramids, ask yourself what the evidence actually says, and then go look it up. Because the actual evidence, the peer-reviewed studies, the archaeological discoveries, the engineering analyses, the historical records, tells a story that no content farm can match. It tells the story of a civilization that looked at an empty desert plateau, looked at the stars above it, and decided to build something that would still be standing when the stars had moved to entirely different positions in the sky. Something that would outlast every kingdom, every war, every plague, every change that 45 centuries of human history could throw at it. And they succeeded. Completely, absolutely. With human hands, human minds, and a level of ambition that we are still, in some ways, trying to catch up to. So the next time someone asks, who built the pyramids, the answer is already the most extraordinary thing you've ever heard. The ancient Egyptians built them, and that single fact, followed honestly and completely, leads you somewhere more mysterious, more impressive, and more meaningful than any theory about aliens or secret technologies ever could. The real mystery of the pyramids isn't who built them. We know who built them. The real mystery is the full depth of what they built. what it meant, how exactly they did it, what is still hidden inside those ancient stones. And we are, right now, in 2026, closer to understanding that than any generation before us has ever been. And somehow, that feels like the most exciting thing of all.